Have you ever noticed that the most successful people rarely announce their big plans? While social media feeds overflow with declarations of "New Year, New Me" and ambitious announcements, those who consistently achieve remarkable things often work in silence until their results become impossible to ignore. This observation reveals one of life's most counterintuitive paradoxes. The quieter you are about your ambitions, the more likely you are to achieve them. Today, we're exploring why protecting your dreams through strategic silence might be the missing ingredient in your formula for success. Before we begin, I want to share that this video follows what I call a spiral structure. Rather than moving linearly, we'll circle around our central theme, diving deeper with each revolution, examining it from different angles while continually reinforcing the core message. Just as a spiral starts from a single point and expands outward, we'll begin with a simple truth and expand it into a comprehensive philosophy for achievement. Think about the last time you felt truly excited about a goal. Perhaps it was starting a business, writing a book, or transforming your health. What was your first instinct? For many of us, the immediate urge is to share this excitement, to announce our intentions to friends, family, or even publicly on social media. This impulse feels natural. After all, shouldn't we celebrate our ambitions and seek support? Yet this very instinct, the desire to proclaim our plans before they've materialized, might be sabotaging our chances of success. What if the act of keeping your greatest ambitions private until they're substantially underway actually increases your likelihood of achievement? Consider this question. When was the last time someone announced they were starting something significant? A diet, a business, a creative project, and then nothing happened. Now contrast that with times you've been surprised by someone's accomplishment. A friend who quietly transformed their body, a colleague who launched a successful side business without fanfare, or an acquaintance who published a book without ever mentioning they were writing one. The difference is striking, isn't it? Those silent achievers seem to operate on a different wavelength, one where actions precede announcements, where results speak louder than intentions. This isn't just anecdotal observation. It's a phenomenon supported by psychology, neuroscience, and the time-tested wisdom of history's greatest achievers. From ancient philosophers to modern entrepreneurs, the practice of strategic silence has been a hidden thread connecting those who turn ambitions into reality. Today, we'll explore why this counterintuitive approach works, how to implement it in your own life, and the transformative impact it can have on your ability to achieve your most meaningful goals. Let's begin with a metaphor that perfectly captures the essence of this philosophy: the seed. Have you ever wondered why seeds need to be planted beneath the soil? Why nature designed this process to happen in darkness and silence? It's because the early, vulnerable stages of growth require protection. A seed planted too shallow or exposed to harsh elements will likely fail to thrive. Your aspirations, goals, and dreams are like seeds. When they first take root in your mind, they're in their most delicate state, fragile, undeveloped, susceptible to damage. Just as a gardener wouldn't dig up a seed every day to check its progress or expose it to harsh conditions, your newest ambitions benefit from a period of protected development. Consider the story of Apple's development of the iPhone. For years, teams worked in complete secrecy, in rooms that required special key cards, on a project many outside the small circle didn't even know existed. Steve Jobs understood that revolutionary ideas need protection. From competitors, yes, but also from the diluting effect of too many opinions and the pressure of public expectations. This principle extends beyond technology. Author J.K. Rowling wrote much of the first Harry Potter book in cafes without telling many people what she was creating. She gave her emerging story the protection it needed before exposing it to the world's judgment. The history of innovation is filled with examples of creation that happened in protective silence before changing the world. Even in nature, we see this pattern. The mighty redwood, which can grow to over 300 feet tall and live for thousands of years, begins from a seed so small you could hold dozens in your palm. Its early growth happens beneath the forest floor, invisible to the world. Only when it has established strong enough roots does it begin its journey skyward. Science offers insight into why this works. Neurologically, ideas and goals in their early stages exist as delicate neural pathways in our brains. These connections strengthen with focus and consistent attention. External input, especially criticism or doubt, can disrupt the formation of these crucial pathways before they've had a chance to solidify. Think about learning a new skill. In the beginning stages, when you're awkward and unskilled, having an audience can activate your brain's threat response, triggering performance anxiety and self-consciousness that interfere with the learning process. Musicians often practice alone countless hours before performing. Athletes drill movements thousands of times in private before executing them in competition. This is the first layer of our spiral. Your dreams require a protected environment to take root. By keeping them private during their vulnerable early stages, you're creating the optimal conditions for their development, just as nature does with seeds beneath the soil. But the benefits of silence go beyond mere protection. There's a fascinating psychological phenomenon at work when we announce our intentions prematurely. In 2009, researchers at New York University conducted a series of experiments led by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer. What they discovered was startling. When people announced their intentions to pursue a goal, they were significantly less likely to actually do the work needed to achieve it. Why? Because the announcement itself created what the researchers called a social reality, a sense that the goal was already partially achieved. The brain experiences a premature sense of satisfaction from the positive social feedback received after sharing the intention. This satisfaction reduces the motivational drive needed to actually complete the goal. Think about it. When you tell someone, "I'm going to start a podcast," and they respond with enthusiasm, "That's amazing. You'd be great at that." You receive a hit of dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. You feel good. Your brain registers a small victory. But this neurological reward comes without having done any actual work toward your goal. It's a false victory, one that can drain your motivation to pursue the real one. I call this the announcement high, a temporary feeling of accomplishment that comes not from progress, but from proclamation. It's a dangerous substitute for genuine achievement. Consider the case of Thomas, a client I worked with who publicly announced his intention to write a novel. He received immediate praise and encouragement from his social circle. People began introducing him as Thomas, the writer, at gatherings. He enjoyed this new identity so much that he spoke about his book constantly. His characters, his plot ideas, his writing process. 6 months later, he had written less than 20 pages. The energy that should have gone into creation had been spent talking about creation. The social recognition fulfilled the same psychological need that actual writing would have, leaving him satisfied without the actual accomplishment. Contrast this with his friend Rebecca, who mentioned to only 2 trusted individuals that she was working on a book. She didn't discuss it at parties or post about it online. 14 months later, she had completed her manuscript. This pattern repeats across various domains. Studies of weight loss goals, smoking cessation attempts, and professional achievements all show similar results. Those who talk less about their intentions tend to make more progress toward them. Naval Ravikant, entrepreneur and philosophical thinker, puts it succinctly. Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. When you announce your desires, you're diffusing the productive tension that drives action. The unhappiness, or better said, the constructive discontent that should fuel your efforts dissipates through words rather than being channeled into work. This is our second spiral layer. Premature sharing creates an illusion of progress that can prevent actual progress. By keeping your ambitions private, you preserve the psychological tension necessary to fuel consistent action. But there's another equally important reason to practice strategic silence: protection from doubt and skepticism. Every truly innovative idea, every ambitious goal, every dream worth pursuing will face skepticism. It's inevitable. Human nature includes a conservative bias against the new and untested. We're wired to question departures from the status quo. When you share your emerging aspirations too early, you expose them to this natural skepticism before you've built the conviction and momentum to withstand it. And make no mistake, Even well-intentioned questions can derail your progress in these early stages. Consider how Elon Musk's SpaceX was received in its early days. Industry experts openly laughed at the idea of a private company succeeding in spaceflight. If Musk had been less certain of his vision or had shared it before developing concrete plans, this overwhelming skepticism might have crushed the endeavor before it began. History is filled with examples of transformative ideas that were initially dismissed. The Wright brothers' flying machine, Einstein's theories, even the personal computer. Had these innovators sought widespread validation before their ideas were sufficiently developed, they might have abandoned them in the face of expert discouragement. The danger isn't just from outright criticism. Even innocent questions can be problematic. How will you find the time? Isn't that field oversaturated? Do you have experience with that? These seemingly reasonable inquiries can plant seeds of doubt before your own conviction has fully formed. I witnessed this with Maria, an executive who dreamed of starting a non-profit focused on environmental education. When she mentioned her early-stage idea at a dinner party, her friends responded with a barrage of practical questions. How will you fund it? Who's your target audience? What makes your approach different? None of these questions were malicious, but Maria wasn't ready to answer them. The evening left her deflated and questioning her vision. Had she protected her idea during its formative stage, she could have developed answers to these questions without the pressure of immediate responses. The most insidious effect of premature exposure is not external doubt, but how quickly it transforms into self-doubt. When someone questions our undeveloped idea, we often internalize their skepticism. The voice of the critic becomes our own inner voice. Neuroscience explains why this happens. When we encounter opposition to our ideas, our amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, activates. This triggers a stress response that can interfere with creative thinking and problem-solving abilities. Repeated exposure to skepticism can create neural pathways that automatically generate doubts whenever we think about our goal. By keeping your ambitions private during their vulnerable early stages, you're not just avoiding external criticism, you're protecting yourself from the internalization of that criticism. You're giving your own belief system time to solidify before testing it against outside opinions. This forms our third spiral layer. Privacy builds psychological armor. By developing your ideas in silence, you build the confidence and conviction needed to withstand inevitable skepticism when you do share them. Now, I want to clarify an important distinction. Strategic silence is not isolation. The goal isn't to pursue your ambitions in complete social vacuum, but to be intentional about when and with whom you share them. There's a substantial difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is selective sharing based on purpose and trust. Secrecy is hiding based on fear or shame. What I'm advocating is thoughtful privacy, not paranoid secrecy. The right people, consulted at the right time, can provide valuable feedback, resources, and support. The key is to be strategic about these interactions rather than broadcasting your intentions indiscriminately. Consider creating concentric circles of sharing. At the center are you and perhaps one or two belief partners, individuals who combine unconditional support with the ability to provide constructive input. These might be mentors, close friends, or family members who have demonstrated their ability to nurture rather than undermine your ambitions. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca advised, "Check the persons into whose ears you wish to whisper something, for when they believe they have your confidence, they will consider that they have opportunity to harm." This isn't suggesting people will intentionally sabotage you, but rather acknowledging that not everyone has the capacity to hold space for your emerging visions. Some individuals project their own fears and limitations onto others without realizing it. Beyond your core circle, consider sharing aspects of your journey only when specific input is needed. Rather than announcing, "I'm writing a book," you might ask a subject matter expert focused questions relevant to your research. Instead of declaring, "I'm starting a business," you might consult with someone about a particular aspect of your business model. This approach allows you to gather necessary information without subjecting your entire vision to premature evaluation. It's the difference between exposing a seedling to carefully measured light versus throwing it into harsh, direct sun. Leonardo da Vinci understood this principle well. He wrote his notes in mirror image handwriting, not just to protect his ideas from competitors, but to ensure they developed according to his own vision rather than being influenced by premature feedback. Similarly, Benjamin Franklin formed what he called a junto, a small group of trusted individuals who met regularly to improve themselves. This selective sharing environment allowed for productive feedback without the diluting effect of broadcasting intentions widely. So our fourth spiral layer becomes: create a strategic inner circle. Be intentional about who has access to your ambitions and at what stage of development they're invited to provide input. Let's now explore another powerful benefit of strategic silence: the generation and preservation of momentum. In physics, momentum is the product of mass and velocity. It represents an object's tendency to keep moving in its current direction. The concept applies remarkably well to goal achievement. When you work quietly on your ambitions, you build momentum in two important ways. First, you accumulate mass, the substance of your work, your skills, your tangible progress. Second, you develop velocity, the habits, routines, and focus that propel consistent action. Premature sharing can disrupt both elements. It can drain energy that should go into building substance, and it can interrupt the focus needed for velocity. Every minute spent talking about what you're going to do is a minute not spent doing it. Consider the difference between two aspiring entrepreneurs. The first shares detailed business plans on social media, creates a website announcing the company coming soon, and spends hours discussing the venture with anyone who will listen. The second quietly researches the market, develops a prototype, tests it with a small group of potential customers, and refines it based on feedback. 6 months later, the first entrepreneur has generated buzz but little substance. The second has a working product and initial customers. The difference is momentum. One directed their energy into talking, the other into doing. I'd like to introduce a practical tool that can help you harness the power of momentum: the Silence Journal. This is a private document where you track your progress, reflect on challenges, and celebrate victories, all without external validation. Here's how it works. Each day, record 3 things: the specific actions you took toward your goal, obstacles you encountered, and how you addressed them. One thing you learned, or a small win you achieved. This practice creates accountability to yourself rather than to others. It allows you to acknowledge progress without seeking external validation. It builds the habit of consistent action rather than consistent talking. A client named James used this approach while developing a software application. Instead of announcing his project, he documented daily progress in his silence journal. When he faced technical challenges that made him want to vent publicly about his struggles, he channeled that energy into detailed journal entries instead. After 4 months, he had not only a functioning application, but also a comprehensive record of his development process, valuable intellectual property in itself. The momentum he preserved through silence became a competitive advantage. This forms our 5th spiral layer. Momentum thrives in silence. By channeling your energy into action rather than announcement, you build both the substance and velocity needed for sustainable progress. Now let's discuss something that makes the discipline of silence particularly rewarding: the art of the reveal. There is something undeniably powerful about revealing accomplishments rather than intentions. When you show what you've done rather than tell what you plan to do, the impact is significantly greater. Think about the difference between these two scenarios. Scenario 1. Someone announces they're writing a book, talks about it for a year, then eventually publishes it. Scenario 2. Someone quietly works on a manuscript, then one day simply announces, "My book is being published next month." Which creates more excitement? Which generates more respect? Which story would you be more likely to share with others? The element of surprise creates emotional impact. It demonstrates commitment through action rather than words. It shows rather than tells. And perhaps most importantly, it shifts the narrative from "I hope to" "I did." Apple mastered this approach under Steve Jobs' leadership. Rather than pre-announcing products months in advance, as many competitors did, Apple would develop in secret, then reveal nearly completed products at carefully orchestrated events. The surprise and delight this generated became a competitive advantage. This strategy isn't limited to business. Author Andy Weir wrote The Martian as a serial on his website before it became a bestseller and blockbuster film. Rather than talking about writing a novel, he simply wrote it, chapter by chapter, building an audience through demonstrated work rather than promised intentions. There's also a psychological benefit to the delayed reveal. By working without public accountability, you develop internal motivation, the most sustainable kind. You train yourself to act without requiring external validation. When you finally do share your accomplishments, the positive feedback becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. The timing of your reveal is important. The ideal moment is when you've built enough momentum that success is likely, but before you've reached the final destination. This allows you to benefit from support during the challenging later stages, while avoiding the pitfalls of premature sharing during the vulnerable early stages. For example, if you're starting a business, you might wait to announce until you have your first paying customers, rather than when you've just had the idea. If you're writing a book, perhaps wait until you've completed a first draft, rather than when you've just conceived the concept. An entrepreneur I worked with followed this approach when developing an innovative educational technology. She waited to share her venture until she had a working prototype and initial test results from 2 schools. When she finally revealed the project, she could demonstrate impact rather than merely promise it. The result was immediate interest from investors and partners who saw proven potential rather than speculative possibility. This forms our 6th spiral layer, the power of the reveal. By strategically unveiling accomplishments rather than intentions, you create greater impact and shift from promises to proven results. Now, I'd like to offer a practical challenge that will help you implement everything we've discussed, the 30-day silence challenge. For the next 30 days, choose one meaningful goal or project and commit to working on it without public discussion. This doesn't mean complete secrecy. You can share with your inner circle as we discussed, but refrain from social media posts, casual mentions at gatherings, or using the goal as conversation fodder. Here's the structure. Days 1 to 5. Clarification. Spend these days defining exactly what you want to accomplish and why it matters to you. Document this in your silence journal. The key question: what specifically will I have accomplished by the end of 30 days? Days 6 to 25. Consistent action. Commit to daily progress, no matter how small. Each day, take at least one concrete step toward your goal and document it. Resist the urge to share updates or seek validation. Channel that energy into additional action instead. Days 26 to 30. Reflection and revelation. Review your progress and prepare how you'll share your accomplishment, if appropriate. Some goals might remain private indefinitely, while others will benefit from strategic sharing at this point. Throughout the challenge, when you feel the urge to talk about your project, ask yourself, would this sharing serve the goal itself, or just my desire for recognition? This simple question helps distinguish between strategic sharing and validation seeking. Each week, reflect on these questions in your silence journal. What progress did I make that only I know about? How has working privately affected my focus and momentum? What have I learned about my relationship with external validation? I've guided hundreds of people through this challenge, and the results are consistently remarkable. Participants report not just progress on their specific goals, but a fundamental shift in how they approach achievement in general. A writer who had announced but abandoned 3 previous book projects completed 12 chapters during her silence challenge. An entrepreneur who had talked about his business idea for years developed a functioning prototype in 30 days of focused private work. A fitness enthusiast who had repeatedly posted about getting in shape finally established a consistent workout routine away from social media's spotlight. This challenge helps break the cycle of announcement, followed by abandonment. It builds the muscle of private discipline, acting without the crutch of public accountability, and perhaps most valuably, it helps you distinguish between goals you pursue for internal fulfillment versus external validation. This forms our seventh spiral layer, practical implementation through temporal discipline. The 30-day silence challenge provides a structured way to experience the benefits of strategic silence in your own life. As we complete our spiral journey through the power of silence, let's integrate everything we've explored. We began with the seed metaphor, understanding that nascent dreams, like seeds, require protection during their vulnerable early stages. We examined the psychological trap of the announcement high and how premature sharing can create an illusion of progress that prevents actual progress. We discussed how privacy builds psychological armor against the inevitable skepticism that accompanies meaningful pursuits, and how to create a strategic inner circle for selective, purposeful sharing. We explored how momentum thrives in silence, with energy channeled into action rather than announcement, and the powerful impact of revealing accomplishments rather than intentions. Throughout history, those who have achieved greatness have understood this principle. As Abraham Lincoln observed, trees are best measured when they're down, and so it is with people. The true measure of a person isn't in what they say they'll do, but in what they've done. The wisdom of quiet achievement isn't about hiding your light or diminishing your ambitions. It's about protecting those ambitions so they can grow strong enough to withstand the winds of doubt, distraction, and premature judgment. It's about channeling your precious energy into creation rather than proclamation. In a world that increasingly values noise over substance, choosing strategic silence can be your competitive advantage. While others announce, you can accomplish. While others talk, you can build. While others seek validation, you can create value. Remember, the most powerful statement isn't "I will," it's "I did." I invite you to begin your own journey with silence today. Choose one meaningful ambition and give it the gift of protection, focus, and momentum that comes with strategic privacy. Let your results make the noise. If this approach resonates with you, I'd love to hear about your experience with the 30-day silence challenge. Not during the challenge, of course, but afterward, when you can share not what you plan to do, but what you did. Until then, remember the words of Lao Tzu: "Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know. Be one who knows, who acts, who achieves, quietly, powerfully, effectively." Thank you for listening. Now go build something remarkable, in silence.